All right, let's do this. So before I move in, I want to remind you guys what Unit 3 is all about. Unit 3 is called the corporate world. I should add in America. We're focused entirely with the American corporate world. Now, our overall theme for this unit is as follows. Business organizations, aka business structures, think about sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, and franchise, within different market structures, that's what we're doing now. So far, we've covered pure competition, operate differently to remain successful in the marketplace. So we have covered business structures. We are currently covering market structures, and we will begin covering how they operate differently to remain successful in the marketplace. So this is basically a 3-part video series to knock out Unit 3. So here we go. All right, so our LEQ. What are the 3 additional market structures? We have covered perfect competition, which I shared with you guys doesn't really exist, and now I'm going to share with you the 3 market structures that do exist. Okay, so perfect competition, I want you guys to remember, is the ideal type of market structure. The reason it's the ideal type of structure because it's great for consumers because it keeps prices down, and it also results in the most efficient allocation of resources for society. Think about scarcity. But I shared with you guys in class, with the exception of maybe agriculture, perfect competition doesn't really exist. The reason perfect competition doesn't really exist is because it is very difficult for any company to meet the 5 conditions, which are a large market. That means many sellers, a similar product, easy entry and exit, easy obtainable information, and independence. When one or more of these conditions are not present, the result is imperfect competition. So again, we have perfect competition, which doesn't really exist. We then have imperfect competition, in which the remaining 3 market structures are made up in. So let's say we are doing check boxes, and if any one of these 5 is not checked, that means it's imperfect competition. So you can have a large market, a similar product, easy entry and exit, and easy obtainable information. But if you do not have independence, if that gets an X, then you are automatically disqualified from perfect competition, and that puts you in imperfect competition. So the 3 market structures representing imperfect competition are monopoly, oligopoly, and my favorite one, monopolistic competition. I just feel awesome when I say that. In this particular video, we are focused on monopolies. Oligopolies and monopolistic competition will be in future videos. So what is a monopoly? I know you guys have heard this before in your American history class. So a monopoly is a market situation or a market structure in which a single, think about mono. Mono is the Greek root word for one. A single supplier makes up an entire industry for a good or service with no close substitutes. So if perfect competition, it represents the most pure form of competition, monopolies are the exact polar extreme opposite. Imperfect competition, aka no competition. In a monopoly, there is no competition because mono means one. It is that one supplier, that one business controlling everything. Now, I want you guys to know, because of that, I don't even really need to go into much detail. I bet you guys can think about perfect competition and see why monopolies are a bad idea. And the truth is, most monopolies are illegal, with a few specific exceptions, which again will be this topic of a later homework video. Now, I want you guys to think about Rockefeller and Carnegie from the early 1920s or so. Those gentlemen were monopolists, and they acquired so much power that it was after them in the 1930s and 1940s the government started actually making monopolies illegal, which we will be covering later. So just how we have characteristics of perfect competition, we also have characteristics of monopoly. So if perfect competition is the most pure form of competition and a monopoly is the least pure, aka no competition, these characteristics of monopoly are basically the exact opposite of the characteristics for pure competition. For instance, there is only a single seller. Only one seller exists for a good or service. Compare that to the characteristics of pure competition. Numerous sellers. Number 2, there are no substitutes. That is, that monopoly has one product and that is all they sell, and there is nothing else that is any close to it. For example, there's a company called Alcoa, which I know you guys probably haven't heard of, and they own aluminum. All of the aluminum in the world is sold by this one specific company. We have Carnegie and steel, and Rockefeller and oil are also examples. Steel, there is no substitute. Steel is steel is steel. It is the preferred metal for building construction. And oil, again, oil is oil is oil. If you don't have oil, there's not really anything that can compare, even though we are making the move towards green energy, thank goodness. Our third characteristic is no entry. So if you think about the characteristics for perfect competition, relatively easy entry and exit, like I could easily start up Jarrett's Juice Bar, and Monopoly, there is no entry, as in you cannot sit here, this business is not going to happen, because the monopolist is protected by obstacles to competition that prevent others from entering the market. And I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And finally, a characteristic of monopoly is that there's almost complete control of the market. That is, by controlling the available supply. Think about Alcoa, and they control all of the world's aluminum. The monopolist can't control market price. If Alcoa is the only company in the world selling aluminum, they can pretty much charge however much they want for it, within reason. Because supply and demand also still apply here. Now, I'm talking about barriers to entry. So this is characteristic 3. So right now I'm looking at no entry. We're going to call that barriers to entry. So here's what barriers to entry are. They are obstacles to competition that prevents others from entering a market. So in perfect competition, there are no barriers to entry, or very few barriers to entry. Now, here are some examples of barriers to entry that favor monopolies. There could be legal issues. For example, some monopolies are protected by law, such as water companies or electric companies, which we'll be covering in a later homework video. In addition, startup cost. It takes tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to start up a company, such as an electric company, such as a nuclear power plant, such as a water processing facility, such as Alcoa and mining aluminum throughout the world. No bank and very few people in the world even have enough money to begin to think about entering that market. And also, people tend to like this one, there are companies out there that own essential raw materials. Like, think about this. Raw materials, we think of land. That is natural resources present on Earth without human intervention. There are companies out there that by law own that specific piece of land. For example, the De Beers Company. If you own a diamond, De Beers Company is the one you got it from. De Beers Company harvests diamonds in Africa. They supply 99.999% of all the world's diamonds. They're the ones that are drilling miles into the ground in search of diamonds. And all of these places in the mall, such as K Jewelers, they get their diamonds from the De Beers Company. The De Beers Company owns diamonds. That means if I were to go to Africa and start digging in the ground looking for diamonds, and if I were to try to sell those diamonds, that's copyright infringement. De Beers could sue me and put me in jail for violating the law. Pretty scary. Here's our LEQ in review. So we have covered the three. Here's our LEQ in review. We have now learned that there are 3 additional market structures which represent imperfect competition. Those are monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. In later videos, we're covering oligopoly and monopolistic competition. In tonight's video, we covered monopolies. So if pure competition is on the far side of the room, monopolies are on the other far side of the room, representing the least extreme form of competition. So there I give you the 4 characteristics of a monopoly. They are basically the exact opposite of pure competition. Thank you all for watching this video. I'll see you all in class.